welcome to another episode of Two Sisters of a Certain Age, Conversations with a Therapist.
And a doctor.
I'm your co-host, Judy Grant, licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I'm your co-host, Dr. Sophia Grant, board-certified pediatrician and board-certified child abuse pediatrician.
So, Candy, I made my first cup of hot chocolate this morning because I'm feeling that fall in the air, that cooler temperature, and I put a little whipped cream on it, the whole kit and caboodle. So
You're late to the party. I've been drinking hot chocolate, but mine is Milo. I'll be drinking the warm Milo. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm loving the change in season. I've got my fall decor up in the house, and I know that you bought some pumpkins.
Yeah, well, pumpkins, I went to the supermarket and I got 2 big honking pumpkins and they were 99 cents each because it was after Halloween.
Yes.
So what do I need to do with the pumpkins? Well, it was one of the warty pumpkins, and I baked it and then I pureed the flesh and I froze it because I can use it in case Raina's tummy gets sick. I can use it for like a soup starter, and I can use it to make pumpkin bread when the kids come home. So yeah, and I'm gonna compost the shell. So yeah, I love it too, and I need to put up my pumpkins too for Thanksgiving.
Yes. So fall is definitely in the air, but you know what is always in the air? It's love. There is always love in the air. You and your siblings, your partner, your family, your friends, which I think is perfect because we have a guest with us today who's going to be talking about love.
Blockbuster Love.
Blockbuster Love. Candy, you want to do the formal intro?
Yes. Lisa Locke, first and foremost, she's Jamaican.
That's the most important.
The most important thing is Lisa is Jamaican, and I've known Lisa for over 20 years, and we were in a mom's group that we're still in. And Lisa, when I met Lisa, she was a real estate agent, and she actually sold my first house when I moved. And then she went to school later, similar to you, and became a therapist. And Lisa wrote a book called Blockbuster Love, where she takes the lessons that that are in movies, and she talks about how you can address that in your love life. For instance, Bridget Jones' Diary, Know Yourself. Beyond the Lights, Know Your Partner. Say What You Feel, Roxanne. Friendship Counts, When Harry Met Sally, Expectations and Possibilities, Boomerang, Delayed Growth, Failure to Launch, Attraction, Insecurity, and Obsession, There's Something About Mary. So welcome, Lisa, to the podcast. We are thrilled to have you and talk about love. So you see couples in therapy.
I do.
What do you think is one of the most common issues that they need to overcome?
A lot of times couples will come saying that they need help with their communication. That's like number one. They think, they're just having trouble understanding each other, and what we find, of course, in the course of therapy, that there are a lot of deeper issues, right? The things that are contributing to conflicts in their communication. So it's not just about what's being said, it's about what's not being said, right? Yeah, and then also like, past trauma, childhood issues, how they're hearing each other, because it's not just about the words, it's about what's heard. And then there are also, some techniques that can be helpful, right, in helping them to hear each other a little bit better. So that's what I try to facilitate, in a couple sessions. Yeah.
So you talked about trauma. When couples are having difficulty, do you go back to the beginning to address the trauma, or do you just talk about the communication? Because everybody comes with baggage.
Yeah.
How do you address what they came for, but then the baggage that they have?
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to just deal with, like I said, the words and the
Mm-hmm.
techniques. I think it's really important to, get to the baggage and try to unpack that and help them to realize or put the pieces together, right? To see why they might be receiving certain messages the way they are, right? And then also we kind of learn ways of practicing emotional self-regulation, which is a huge piece, right? Because a lot of times couples will come in and they're like, they want me to co-sign and like change my
Yeah.
partner.
Right.
Yeah.
They want
Right.
you to pick
Tell them,
sides.
yeah. Tell them what's wrong with you, and
Right.
agree with me, right? So a lot of it is recognizing your own patterns, and how they got established, and how you can better regulate your own emotions, so that you can work together in harmony and hear each other and cooperate
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
So I want to share a little story. So my very first couples client, I was still a student in my practicum. I was interning at a private practice. Very first couples. And I might have had two other couples. So I'm like brand spanking new to this whole therapy world. And I go in and it's all about arguing over each other. Just like nobody's stopping to hear what the other is saying. It's just constant. Well, she said, well, he did this. Well, and it was I had to kind of brace myself. I had to be referee. We couldn't get to any of the issues because I needed to just kind of de-escalate what was happening. And I spent quite a while after that first session, second, third, what have you, just helping them to be able to have a conversation without that sort of back and forth thing. But I remember walking out of that first session and my colleagues, knowing it was my first couple, were like, Judy, are you okay? Like, that's like they could hear it. It was so loud. That sounded intense. Are you okay? And learning as a therapist how to even manage that and to try to make sense of it, to be able to help them get to a place where they can just talk. That is a challenge in
Yeah.
and of itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think about even my first couple session too. It was kind of similar. The wife stormed out, and I was like, what do I do? And remember like kind of debriefing with my supervisor, at the end, and we talked about how I was able to use that as an example of maybe what happens, right? At home in their relationship. Does she kind of, withdraw, right? And that is a coping mechanism that can be learned. That's learned, in response to feeling maybe overwhelmed, feeling insecure. So sometimes people will withdraw, or they just in that. So we're able to talk about that as a pattern. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some, like for people listening, if they're having conflict in their relationship, not just marriage, what are some techniques that they can listen to this podcast and say, maybe I'll try this at home with my partner? Do you have anything?
Just in terms of just like a general kind of conflict.
Yeah. Like if say you feel that you're neglected and you tell your spouse that you're tired and they don't seem to hear you, and they think maybe because you're a stay-at-home mom that you have all the time in the world, and you're home with two babies and you're exhausted, and they don't understand why dinner isn't ready on time. Like, what's a good way of approaching that conversation to get the most fruit out of it without making the person feel defensive?
Yeah, well, again, we can't necessarily control how other people will feel, but I think it's important to be in touch with and know exactly what you're feeling, right? And to be able to say, this is how I'm feeling. Like I feel, right? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling tired, right? And then a specific example when, you came home and asked why dinner wasn't ready or something like that. It made me feel like maybe I wasn't cared for, right? And what would be more helpful or what I need, right? So you're saying what you feel and then also asking for specifically what you need. What would be more helpful is if you would maybe ask how my day went,
Right.
instead of
Right,
asking,
right.
right? So you're specifically saying what you need and asking for that.
Right.
I
So
want. Oh, go ahead,
go
Candy.
ahead. Okay.
I
It's just in that you're using I statements rather
mhm.
than you never see me. You
Exactly.
don't appreciate me. You
Right.
you think I'm superwoman. So you put
Right.
it on yourself rather than the person. They're less likely to become defensive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, because no one likes to feel blamed, right?
Right.
And
Right,
yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
And also when you talk about like being very specific with what you need, because a lot of us can be very vague. It's like, I just need a break. Well, what does that look
Yeah.
like? Oh,
Right.
so what I really need is to be able to take, my Saturday morning for myself. I just want to go for a walk. Can you please just handle the kids or whatever so I can just have
Mm-hmm.
a minute to myself? That is more specific than I just need a break. So
Right.
Yeah.
another technique that is I think is really helpful is when somebody is in this sort of conflict to mirror back or to
Mm.
summarize what they've said.
Yeah.
So that person can then say, okay, sweetie, so I hear that you really just need some downtime on Saturday morning. I'll take the kids so you can go and take your walk. You can get a manicure, whatever you need to do. So
Mm-hmm.
repeating back what they've said lets that
Mm-hmm.
person know that they were heard. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Hmm.
Exactly.
they heard me. Okay,
Right.
got it. This is great. As opposed to like, I don't know what you need.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Lisa, Blockbuster Love, how did that come about?
It's interesting because I mean, I've always loved movies. I've been very drawn to them. I think, like a lot of people, but when I noticed that when I would watch them, I'd really be drawn to the relationships, right, and the interactions. And then in grad school, as I started to, of course, learn so much about relationship dynamics and
Mm-hmm.
families, I guess I started to really kind of hone in on what was going on, right, in
Mm-hmm.
certain scenarios. And I just thought this would be just a great teaching tool because, of course, a lot of people like movies and it evokes so much emotion. And it's also a great way of kind of externalizing, where
Right.
people may be experiencing certain things when they see other people, maybe like on the big screen, experiencing similar things. You have a different reaction to it, right? You don't. Um, I don't know, you can empathize. I've noticed a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
You can even see like couples sometimes as they watch certain movies, like they'll be drawn to each other, they'll hold hands, and
Mm-hmm.
studies have kind of been done actually that show the power of movies in helping couples like be closer to each other. So I just
Uh-huh.
thought, yeah, why not? Use the what I've I guess been learning in a
Hmm.
way to
Mm-hmm.
maybe help others in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Do
So
you ever tell couples watch a movie and
I
what
do.
are you okay? So
I do.
what's a movie that you refer to that you
um,
recommend to couples?
well, most recently it was Hope Springs, which is working on my second book, which is about the realities of
Hmm.
relationships and navigating challenges. And
mm-hmm.
one has to do like sexual intimacy, right?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so Hope Springs is one that kind of touches on that topic and helps couples to recognize that this is, or normalize it, that in lasting relationships that there definitely can be changes in libido and how
Hmm.
intimacy looks in relationships. So yeah, that's one I've most recently recommended for couples to watch.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to take Candy, you mentioned you were reading a little bit about like different couples on from Lisa's book. Um,
Hmm.
let's take a couple that a lot of us know. So I'm thinking of When Harry Met Sally. So, and you mentioned that like the foundation for that relationship was their friendship. So, explain a little bit.
That's actually one of my favorite movies I can watch over and over again. Absolutely love it. It's a great fall movie too.
Yeah.
So great timing. Yeah, I think that definitely friendship is such a important part of any relationship. And I think sometimes it's taken for granted in romantic relationships, but that's really like a glue that holds people together. You know, my husband and I have been married for 33 years, and I say that that's like really been the bedrock, you know, and sometimes we'll look at each other and he's like, well, we're still friends, right? You know, so when we have difficulties, and it can get you through so much. So yeah, I love that. And even in the movie, there's you know, the whole debate on can men and women be friends, you know,
Right,
but
right,
all the
right.
while they are building a friendship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's you mentioned something like when you're in grad school and you're learning so much. I did the same thing. Like I can watch a movie now and be thinking like therapeutically, like
Exactly.
what does this couple need? What are they looking
Hmm.
for? What are they missing?
Hmm.
So I see that I see it with a new perspective,
Hmm.
since, my career change into therapy.
Hmm.
So
That's interesting that you guys both dissect what you see from a therapeutic model, because I always go around diagnosing people with medical stuff. So so it's definitely a part of our lives. Now, Lisa, as couples age, we're a podcast about women of a certain age. What are the different challenges? I imagine some of it has to do with sexual dysfunction and maybe becoming an empty nester and looking at your spouse and saying, God, what do we have in common anymore? So, what do you see in your practice?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking just, you know, like midlife crisis. I just recently kind of wrote a blog about that. But yeah, I think that it causes you to just kind of reflect over your life, right? And a lot of couples will come in, and it affects men and women, right? And sometimes it can be the man might be experiencing it and the woman's not, or vice versa, right? So, but it can cause you to kind of reflect and even start to maybe regret some things, you know, and the tendency can be then to look at your partner like, oh, you know, I made a mistake, or why did I make this choice? And then you start blaming, right? So that's a big thing, because you're just trying to make sense, I think, of your life at a certain point. And sometimes, it's not maybe handled well, and so then the partner's left feeling like, what's going on, you know, why are
Right.
they acting? So that can be a big one. You know, of course, menopause
Right.
is also another thing that, you know, can cause some disruption or confusion or
Right.
frustrations. You know,
right.
what's happening with my body,
Uh-huh.
why, you know, those kinds of things. So yeah, as we age, definitely, you know, erectile dysfunction. There's just like
Right.
a lot of different things that can, uh, and like you mentioned, empty nesters, you know, for
Yeah.
sure. Like if you, as a couple, have been so used to operating like with more than two people, and you have
Yeah.
Yeah.
other people that you're considering, and now it's just like the two of you. So you've got to make this adjustment, and what does that look like, and how do we navigate that, and even feelings of loss, and yeah, different roles. So
Right.
yeah.
Now, is every midlife crisis a bad thing?
No, no, not at
Okay.
all. It can be definitely a time of transformation, really. And
Uh-huh.
yeah.
How have you seen people transform their life in a positive way when they
Well,
kind of evaluate themselves?
yeah, I think it definitely allows you to, like I said, self reflect on maybe choices made and why they were made, and being able to make peace with certain ones, and then actually learn from, you know, different experiences that you've had to say, okay, now where do I want to go, and what do I want to do with all this wisdom that I've accumulated over this time, in settling into like self acceptance, a radical self acceptance can be very powerful and transformative.
Yeah, I think we think about the cliche midlife crisis, like the sports car,
Right.
the young girlfriend, what have you. But I'm kind of thinking, although I didn't feel like it was a crisis for me, but going back to school at 43, 45 years old, how old was I? 43? That was like a time of self-reflection, like, wait, what am I doing? Is it fulfilling me? To which I would answer no. So let me change this up. So I think that was a positive,
Absolutely.
transformation midlife or getting towards midlife. But, we still do see that stereotype of,
Yeah.
the sports car and the motorcycle. And
Right. Yeah.
I'm actually reminded of my children's father, and we weren't quite midlife, but getting there, who was having the affair, wanted the fast car, bought a motorcycle, got a tattoo. It's like, what the heck is happening to this
such
person?
A stereotype. It's such a
Right.
stereotype.
Yeah.
And then when they're in it, they feel like they're so individual.
They're so cool.
They're
right,
so cool.
Right.
Like, dude, you're a freaking cliche. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things that I was thinking about was that in my experience with couples and myself personally, like going to a therapist as a couple when there are challenges, often one person already has their foot out the door. And we want to, and that was definitely my case. Like, he was long gone and I was still like holding on to hope. But we also need to normalize couples therapy for people before it gets to that place, right? Come in, let's talk about like sustainability therapy for your relationship to keep it going in a positive way. So I don't want people to think like, oh, I have to go to a therapist because we're having these problems and I'm already half out. No, you can come to help nurture your relationship.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of people, will say like couples therapy doesn't work, but that's because they wait until it's like, too late.
They're bleeding out. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a major hemorrhage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the book in regards to, like, were there themes there? Did you find themes of love? And if so, what were they?
Well, in the first book, it's about romance and, like the first stages of relationships. And so I thought it was important to talk about maybe some things maybe that I wish I knew, early on in terms of like really just like how important it is to know yourself, right? To love yourself, right? I think that's the foundation of really being able to connect with someone on a meaningful level. So you're not necessarily looking for someone else to define you, right? Yeah. But you can be assured in who you are and what you bring to the relationship, and that you can share, right, with someone as opposed to looking to someone else, right, to like complete you or fulfill that for you. So that's one theme that I talk about in the book, is the importance of that. Also, like knowing your partner. Really spending time to get to know them as well. And just recognizing that, not all relationships are a good fit, right? So it's like, and it doesn't mean that the person has to be bad, or anything, but so spending some time just getting to know your partner is important.
Yeah.
And then also recognizing that there can be some setbacks and there are going to be challenges, and that doesn't have to mean that it's not working. That's just normal. And there may be ways of overcoming those setbacks. So
you mentioned something that takes me to Jerry Maguire in the movie when he says, "You complete me." Now, it was a swoon-worthy moment. It felt like incredibly beautiful and romantic and like, oh my gosh, this was powerful. But the reality is, we should not want anybody to complete who we are.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I do talk about that too, because, as much as I think that there are great themes in movies and things that we can learn from, there are also things that are not, necessarily reflective of reality.
Right. This is
so
true.
that's and that's one of them, Yeah.
That whole completion thing, it just seems so incredibly toxic. Like, I am a whole person. And the burden to complete somebody else, it's too much. It's too much. And I think frequently relationships fail when you give that other person so much power over you. When that person is the source of your happiness. And you have to have a source of happiness that comes from within. It can't be dependent on that person. That person leaves you, drops dead. What, you're going to be unhappy? So that completion thing, it's swoon-worthy, but it's a bunch of crap.
Another reason I think another reason why a lot of relationships fail too is that we put too much burden on them. We don't recognize how important it is to have a life of our own. Right? So still having your friendships right outside of your relationship and having your own life, right? Not putting so much and expecting your spouse to be your therapist, your friends, all these things, right? So that's important.
I think
go ahead, Judy.
I think of need versus want. You shouldn't need this person. You want this person. You choose to have this person, but you shouldn't feel like you need them to provide all of these things for you.
Right. Exactly.
Judy, I agree with that 100%. However, I feel a lot of masculinity is tied into being needed. This person needs me to provide for them financially. This person and needs me for this, that, and the other.
You're right.
I have found, I've been single for 14 years now. I have found that in, early attempts to date, men would tell me, you don't need me. Why would I? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel it's so much better to be wanted than needed. But a lot of that masculinity is tied into, providing financially. And then I feel like it can also be used to manipulate. Like, if she needs me for finances, I know she's going to stay. But here I am, an independent woman, sending my kids to private school, paying my mortgage, traveling, and I don't need you. I mean, you might, I just want to be with you, but you got to find a man secure with himself, to take somebody like me on, Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. I think, historically throughout society, the man, it seems so antiquated, but there is still truth to it, is the provider.
Yeah.
And then you hear about men feeling emasculated when their partner is maybe the person making more money more money than they are, or are more accomplished in their career. So I'm sure that comes into play, and those aren't even things that they might even recognize and be able to articulate, right?
It's so seeped into like our culture.
Exactly.
The way we're conditioned.
Right? I think it can become a stewing resentment when it's not talked about. I remember I went on a date with a guy one time, and he said, I've never dated a woman who makes more money than I do. I'm like, it's the first date. Why are we talking about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
so much of our identity, sometimes identity is wrapped up in that, right? Yeah. So,
what do you think about people whose identity is wrapped up in being a couple? What do you think about people who, it's, Tony and Tanya, whatever, and this is who we are, Tony and Tanya. And what do you think about people who identify as, a couple first?
Yeah, I mean, I think if foremost, if it works for them, if it's working, okay. But I think at some point it may not work, right? I think as you probably, start to get older and recognize that there is more, I think it could break down. And, or if what I've seen happen too is one person checks out, of that couple, right? Then it can leave the other one feeling devastated. Like, I thought we were, this is what, So, but again, I mean, if it works for people.
Right.
Then, yeah.
And I remember many years ago, a friend talking about her relationship with her husband and how they do everything together. They don't like hang out with the boys or go to dinner with a friend. It's all about them. And to me, it sounded like, whoa, that sounds like a lot. But, they've been married for, 30 plus years. So also it's like you have to recognize that the dynamic that you think is healthy or good might not be for everybody.
Yeah.
So recognizing that each couple has their own personal dynamic, and if it works for them, great. That couple was very much like they identified as a couple, period.
Right.
But it works.
Yeah, I tell couples all the time, like, to really avoid comparison. Because that, even the whole, like, hashtag couples goals kinds of things, right? Where,
right.
right? Because that can be dangerous, looking at other couples like, oh, why aren't we like them? Or we should be, work on, what you've got, what's good for you, in alignment with your values and what you want. Yeah.
And that's something that we've talked about on the podcast about comparison. Comparing your career, your kids, everything. I want to talk about something that I've noticed within the past 5 years is the rise of people speaking more freely about polyamory, which to me is like, it's foreign to me. It will never be me. I think I just think it's so far away from who I am. Do you see couples come to you and they think polyamory might be a solution, or do you see people in polyamorous relationship and they're doing fine? What are your thoughts on that?
That's not like typically who I see, like, in my practice. So I think who I tend to appeal to are more, monogamous couples who are trying to work
keep
on
it together.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily a population that I work with, but again, it goes back to, well, what's working for you,
right?
Right.
That's working. Yeah.
Yeah, I have my beliefs. I feel like if you're married and you feel the need to bring other people in, there's something wrong with your marriage. But it's not my thing. Judy, what are your thoughts?
Personally, it's not going to work for me. If it works for you, and if we can have a conversation about it, wonderful. It's that is your business. If it's good for you, it's good for you. I remember working with couples, one in particular who had an open marriage, right? So it wasn't a polyamorous relationship; it was whomever, and that seems even more fraught with challenges than a polyamorous relationship, because even polyamorous, it's like it's those three people and those three people alone.
The throuple.
The throuple. This, I felt, became very toxic, and in this with this couple in particular, it was the husband that said, let's do this. Took the wife some time to come around to it. And then she's like, okay, if this is what he needs for our relationship. And so you know that there are challenges there. And then it's the husband that gets jealous of the wife when she's actually
that's typically what happens. Everybody agrees, and then somebody becomes jealous because you may overstate your value. You may think that you're all that, and nobody wants you.
Right.
But
it does seem to add just more complications, right?
Yeah, and I'm a jealous person. It would make me lose my mind. I could not even.
No. But I think, we have to recognize that there are all sorts of relationship dynamics. And again, if they feel like they're in a healthy relationship, polyamorous, open relationship, monogamous, two people, if they feel it's healthy, if everybody is, getting what they want and need from the relationship, more power to you. But, not my cup of tea personally. And I would love to talk to somebody more about that to help me understand this. I think that would be, kind of eye-opening to have that conversation. And not that conversation as a therapist, because as a therapist, I have to present a certain way.
Right.
But just putting that aside, tell me about that. That's fascinating.
Right.
Right.
Now, Lisa, have you seen any couples where you have thought to yourself, oh God, this is not good. This is not good. And just use vague terms, but what type of situation do you think it's yikes, I don't think this is going to work out?
I think situations where there is just a lot of criticism. John Gottman, he talks about the four horsemen, right?
Yes, he does.
Yeah. So, criticism is definitely a big one, right? And contempt. So those two, I think if there is a lot of contempt, that's very, very difficult to deal with and to overcome, right? Especially if there's not a willingness, and like Judy mentioned, sometimes they come in with one foot out the door, or even I've seen couples just wanting to maybe save face by saying, I tried therapy, but not really,
Right.
really wanting to do the work, right? So kind of being checked out and not doing the work. So I think those would be the signs oh, this is not good.
Yeah. But, that sort of contempt and criticism, that's borderline, psychologically or verbally abusive, so you need to be mindful of that. We don't want it to escalate to that place, but, it feels like it's going down that path.
Yeah, sure.
So you said the four horsemen: criticism, criticism, what are the other two?
Defensiveness and stonewalling.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what's an example of stonewalling?
Oh, just shutting the other person out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just emotionally just detaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When people seek out therapy, is it typically one person over another, you think?
Generally. And it's interesting because in the past couple years, I've noticed men reaching out more. Which I don't know if you've noticed that, Judy, but in the beginning, it seemed like it was, women, but now I'm getting a lot of, men reaching out. And in dating relationships, I'm getting more calls, which is also, I think, interesting, right? Trying to decide, I guess, if they want to maybe move towards marriage or if they want to, stay in this, which, I would think being unheard. I wouldn't have thought of going to therapy when I was dating someone,
Right.
Yeah.
I know a young couple in therapy right now, and they're dating. Do you think that a dating couple who is moving toward marriage should go through therapy? before getting married?
I'm a big proponent of premarital therapy for sure.
Yes.
Yes, I
Yes.
think it's so important. Yeah.
So important. I think sitting there with a therapist, or, maybe it's like a couples retreat sort of thing, premarital, and bringing up these issues that there's might still be in that honeymoon phase that they haven't talked about yet. Like, how are we going to manage things financially? How many children do we want? Where are we going to want to live? Oh, we're from different cultural backgrounds. How do we celebrate? Who are we going to spend the holidays with? These are all things that don't get addressed beforehand. And when they're in it, now it becomes a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. How do you manage conflict? Yeah.
I didn't know that Christmas was a big deal for you. I just want to go to McDonald's. Like, what? So I think when you put yourself in a position to do that in a premarital sort of way, structure, you're able to have some hard conversations. It's like being preemptive, proactive.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like addressing the issue before it becomes an issue.
Right.
So I think it's something that I would absolutely recommend.
Yes, for sure.
How many sessions is that usually that you do?
It depends. Usually I'll give a assessment initially to identify like what the problem areas might be, or what the growth areas might be. And so depending on how many of those we're working on, I don't know, it could be maybe 8 to 12 sessions.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. It depends. But it can also get more complicated and be more than that. So
right.
I'd say minimum probably 8. Yeah.
Wonderful.
I want to talk a little bit about love languages. And I talk about this, whether it's with clients, with my own family, or when I'm teaching, I share this with my students, because the concept of love languages really helps to decipher what your partner, what your child, what your friend may need from you in order for them to feel loved. Right? If it's acts of service or quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, giving gifts, understanding that what their language is, I think, is incredibly helpful. Like, this is what they need. It might be different from mine, but now I know that this is what they need. And love languages quiz, they have a quiz online that, takes a minute, and you can kind of do this as a couple with your kids, whomever, and so you can better understand. And the thing that I like about it is it's not just about romantic couples. Like, I've done it with my kids. Like 2 of my kids are physical touch. One is absolutely not.
I know, and I know which one.
You think? So, and then she is more quality time than physical touch. So I'm going to smother my others with hugs and kisses. Her, I'm going to spend the time with. So, and then taking that now into romantic relationships, I think it's a nice little tool in your back pocket that you can use to help break down any sort of confusion that might be occurring.
Yeah, that's a big part of like knowing your partner, right?
Right.
It's one of the biggest, I guess, gifts that we can give is to be able to love someone in their love language,
how they want to be loved.
Yeah, how they want to be loved, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think frequently there's a disconnect. Like, your love language might be acts of help, but your partner wants to give you gifts. And it's like, I just want you to help me fold the laundry. I don't need the flowers from Trader Joe's. So I actually did the love language quiz and found that depending on the stage of my life, my love language has changed. But it was good for me in terms of knowing how my kids wanted and needed to be loved. One child loves gifts, and it doesn't have to be exorbitant. I can bring home a blow pop, and she will feel loved with that blow pop. And then, another may want you to sit and watch a movie. So I think that's very helpful also.
Yeah, and another piece of that is also interesting too, or another perspective, is to recognize that even though the other person's love language may be different, that is how they express love. So you are loved, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the idea could sometimes be this person doesn't love me because they're not, doing it my way or the way that I want. But then to just recognize, no, they do. It's just we have to communicate,
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's fascinating to think about that, but I think that lays a nice foundation for how we give and receive.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, how do people come to you? Do they come to you virtually, or do they? Okay, so it's all virtual, or do you have any
right
in
now
person?
since COVID, it's been all virtual. Yeah, I used to just be in person, but then after COVID, then it's just all virtual right now.
So how do people get a hold of you, Lisa, if they're listening and they're thinking, wow, I'd love to be able to speak to her?
Yeah, you can visit my website, lisalocke.mft.com, and there's a form they can fill out. I have also a free workbook they could download that corresponds with the book, Blockbuster Love. That's, they can just download that too if they want to get more information about the book. They can order the book online. So that's a good way to get in touch with me. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
How busy is your practice? How busy are you?
Oh gosh, it ebbs and flows. This week has been very busy,
just like marriage. So how many clients do you see like a week?
Probably 20.
Okay,
about 20.
All right.
Yeah,
and that's pretty. That's
sorry.
pretty robust.
Yeah, I mean it ebbs, like I said, between 15 to 20 a week.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you in private practice, Judy? Are you also?
I have a very small private practice because I teach at a local university, and I'm also the director of equity and inclusion at a nonprofit community mental health organization. So my practice is small, but I feel and I know that when I'm teaching or working with my staff or the community, that I get to rely on all of those therapeutic skills when I'm talking, especially when I'm talking about like racial trauma and things of that nature. All of that comes up in my work in one way or another. So I get to rely on that.
Yeah.
Maybe like my full private practice will be more like retirement phase, semi-retirement phase.
I hear you. Yeah.
Now, Lisa, are you glad that you went to grad school later? And
absolutely. I mean, I feel like this work is so meaningful, and I think that's another gift. I think of the midlife, where you kind of are looking for
reevaluate
and reevaluating, right? And so I'm so glad. I've this is probably my third or fourth career pivot, but this is it. This is it. So.
But between the three of us, we have reevaluated our careers and changed something. Like, I did child abuse medicine when I was like 40, and I'm so glad I did. So that's another lesson of midlife. Sometimes you have to reevaluate and find out what gives you joy. And to tell you the truth, I can't imagine doing anything but what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys feel the same.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, Lisa, when is your next book coming out?
I'm putting the finishing touches on it. So hopefully early next year. So
really.
So we didn't have you back to discuss that one.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. That would be wonderful.
Congratulations. Here's the book, Blockbuster Love. And I think I got my copy at Amazon.
Yes, it's available on Amazon.
Yes. And, reach out to Lisa. And that's Locke with an E on the end.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. By the way, I was telling my kids, in my contacts, I probably have 9 Lisas. And that
really?
is a very common name for people our age.
Really?
Yes. I mean, look in your contact. I have tons of Lisas in my contact list. So
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a pleasure to have you, truly.
No, thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
I love it when it's all Jamaicans on the call. So Yes.
All right. So, Two Soka family, thank you for joining us for this episode of Two Sisters of a Certain Age. Candy, how can people reach us?
Oh, they can watch us on YouTube at Two Soka. They can watch us on Instagram, Two Sisters of a Certain Age. We are on Facebook, and you can email us at twosokapodcast@gmail.com.
All right. Always a pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
No.